Hi, everybody. Welcome to April 2026, Selling in Brooklyn. I'm Tina Fallon. I'm here with Michael Moshan. And say hi, Michael.
Hello, everybody, and hi, Tina. It's really nice to be here with you. This is like my favorite part of the week, having you and I talk in real estate for, I can do it for hours, but I know our time is limited, but I really enjoy this and I'm looking forward to it.
Couldn't agree more. Michael and I have discussed that we would like to focus today on estate sales. So this is something that comes up every time we do selling in Brooklyn, but it really would benefit from a little bit of a deeper dive. So on today's session, we're going to focus on estate sales, and we'll give you a little bit of information along the way that's good for everybody. But this one is going to be specifically for those of you dealing with an estate sale. So, as I mentioned, I'm Tina Fallon, Christina Fallon, and you've got Michael Moshan here as well.
Hi, Tina.
Michael, tell us a little bit about your practice.
Oh, sure. So, real estate lawyers who do residential fall into a few buckets. There's the big volume firms that do a lot of work, and they have paralegals and associates working their files. There is the other bucket of a lawyer who does a jack of all trades. They might do litigation. And I am neither of those. Okay. I am a solo practitioner. I only do residential real estate. I've been doing it on and off for 25 years. Tina, I've known you in the business for almost all of it. And you and I have kind of watched real estate move through the city, take on different forms. We've watched the trends. I think I've closed thousands of transactions, and have a particular expertise in devoting myself to my clients and the agents with whom I work. I love what I do, and I have an office on Madison and 49th. Don't hate me, Tina, because I'm in Manhattan. I'm not Brooklyn. Don't judge me.
I don't
Don't judge
judge you.
me.
I don't judge
Don't.
you.
I bleed Brooklyn. You know I bleed Brooklyn. I lived in Williamsburg for 17 years before I had to move out to the suburbs. And don't hate me for that either, Tina. Don't judge me. But so that's my practice in a nutshell.
And our practice at Realty Collective really dovetails nicely with what Michael does. We are a very small company and we have been around for 21 years this year. I have been at Realty Collective for 20 of those 21 years. And so we are very small, woman-owned business. We're one of the few independents that's still left as there's been a lot of consolidation in our industry. And we focus really intensely on people. We do not have shareholders. Our clients are our clients, and we really are here for you. And one of the places that really shows up is when we're working in estate sales. And Michael and I have done those deals together. It is an intense process. It sometimes involves multiple family members who are survivors or trustees, and people who live in multiple different states and are trying to arrive at these decisions together. And it helps for you to have an overview, especially if you're not familiar with New York City real estate, of how this process will work. So, yes, this is selling in Brooklyn, but this is really true anywhere you're going to be selling in New York City. So I'm going to scroll through a couple of these considerations that we're looking at. So the why sell now, because today we're going to focus on estate sales. The reason to sell is because you have inherited a home or you are now the trustee of an estate. Although we will talk a little bit about maybe sometimes it isn't right to sell and you can hold that property and rent it out, but we'll get into that in just a little bit. So considerations. Michael, I really want you to talk to these things that people who are not in New York are not always aware of. So, when you are selling property in New York, when you're buying property in New York, there are a lot of costs associated with those sales. And sometimes you think, oh, the neighbor next door sold their property for a lot of money. I can sell this one for a lot of money. It may not be enough money to cover your costs. So, what are some of those costs, Michael?
Well, I mean, you really, whether you have inherited a property whether you are the executor, all of a sudden find yourself to be the executor of a property, or whether you are just selling because it's time. Um, I'm sure you're crunching numbers. I'm sure you are have your spreadsheet out, right? And you know because of you know about what you can sell. Maybe you're hoping to sell a property for, and you have this number, but what does that number really mean? What is your net? What is the net after you pay what you need to pay? What is that magic number that you're hoping, that you're thinking about? I mean, there's just a ton, right, Tina? I mean, a ton that goes into calculating that net, right? And
Absolutely.
and right, and like you not only do you have all the stuff at a closing, which I think like I tend to focus on, right? Like I'm the real estate lawyer and I give you a closing cost analysis and you have this, everything from like the broker fees and the transfer taxes and like the lawyer fees and like that are in like the thousands to like the little $50 fee, fee. Like it's all there and that's how you get your net. But sometimes the net is more than just that, and there are, income tax considerations, right? I mean, like if you are not a New Yorker and you are selling an investment property, that is looked at very differently than if it's your primary residence and you're selling. If you're selling a co-op, there might be a flip tax. And how is that flip tax even calculated? Some co-ops charge you 1%, 2%. Some co-ops have wacky formulas that they come with. It's going to be 10% of your profit. All these formulas all are part of that beautiful spreadsheet that you need to have, and that will look, it should be like color coordinated and should be like a beautiful document because in the end you want to be kind of clear. You want to be clear about what you're coming out of this sale with, what's in your pocket. And some of the bullet points that I see on this slide, Tina, we can dive into every one of them. Like, look, we didn't even mention like your mortgage payoff. I mean, you have to pay off your mortgage, right? That gets lopped off. So these bullets are good in reminding all of us about all the fees and costs and that we need to consider in understanding what we're going to leave the table with.
I think in addition to these costs, when we're talking about estate sales too, is that over the course of the sale of the property, you have to carry the property. So if you're in a co-op building, you have monthly maintenance that you have to keep paying, even if you're 1,000 miles away and there's no one occupying the home. So understanding, well, we need to get to these numbers pretty quickly so that we can understand maybe you can't sell yet because you can't afford to carry it. And therefore, is that property something that you can rent out while we put the kind of scaffolding together for your sale? And
Yep.
in some cases, the answer is sure, that's a no-brainer. In a co-op, sometimes that's not the case. So it's really important that we get to the granular level with this as soon as we possibly can. And it's if you're doing this at a time when you're also still grieving a family member, it can feel like a lot, and it is a lot. But what we don't want is something actually in one of these sessions, and one of the reasons I wanted to focus on estate sales is at the end of a selling in Brooklyn session, we had somebody say, well, we have our property on the market and the property hadn't gone through probate yet. And so you need to also make sure that you can legally sell the home before before a real estate agent swoops in, and they will swoop in and suggest, oh, I'm the person who needs to sell this. Somebody who's not particularly ethical might trick you into trying to sell your home before you have all your ducks in a row. So
Yeah.
that's
I
a
just had
huge
a
important piece.
Tina, I just had a conversation yesterday with a client who was selling. He was talking about like the carrying costs that you were just mentioning, and was saying, "Oh, can we?" The buyer said, "Can we close on June 1st, June 4th?" And the buyers, my client said, "Oh, I really would like to close June 1st." It was 3 days before, and I was like, "What's the what's the difference?" And he said it was about $1,000 a day that he was carrying, like that's the real money. I
It's
was
real
like, okay,
money.
let's close June 1st. It's serious money, right?
It's serious money, and it's something I think to take into consideration when you're weighing offers, which we'll get to in a little bit. It's somebody might be offering a little less money, but if they can close in 30 days and there is a difference of, say, an additional 60 days of carrying costs that you might have, we need to factor that all in when you're weighing the different offers. So
It's
I know
such a good
I'm
point.
getting ahead of myself in
No,
the
no, no,
offer.
but it's a great point, Tina. Like with estate sales, it's just an empty apartment, right? Or it's an empty house sometimes, and that's an interesting take that it's not like I'm living there and I'm getting the benefit and it's often an empty apartment that needs to sell and the carrying costs are not to be overlooked. It's a good point.
Right. And I think if you're lucky, it's an empty apartment. In most estate sales, it is not. And that's something that we can discuss as well. I'm going to jump again ahead
Yep.
through some of these slides. This question about is your property what people are looking for now? If you're in an estate sale, you don't have any choice about that. The property you have is the property that we are selling. And so if you're lucky, you meet some of these bullet points. You've got, there's a lot of amenities. Although if you have a lot of desirable amenities, chances are you also have fairly high carrying costs as well. So your property is what it is, and whether or not this is like the hot ticket item that everybody is looking to buy right now, it doesn't matter. You only need one buyer, and so we are going to focus the sale on your specific property and your specific needs. And then I think this piece is really crucial for sellers, whether it's an estate sale or not, having a plan for after you sell. So this is what Michael was talking about a little bit, making sure that we've done the spreadsheet, that we know that you're going to get enough money out of this to cover the costs. We want to make sure you can pay off that mortgage with the sale. Um, and then looking at the rest of this with your timeline, your bottom line, and obviously you don't, if it's an estate sale in most cases, you're not moving out of that home, but knowing what you're planning on doing with the proceeds after you sell.
Yep.
So is it being divided among various family members? What are the terms of what are the terms that you have to adhere to when you go through that sale? So Michael, can you talk a little bit about timing in New York City sales?
Sure. Estate sale or not, right? You are subject to typically a few contingencies, a few dominoes that need to fall, right? The first one after you go to contract, the first domino that typically falls, again, in co-ops and condos, of course, is the board. Um, and before the board is the financing. So if you have a buyer who is financing, they need to get a loan commitment. That is 30 days these days, 30, maybe 45 days to get your financing lined up. Financing contingencies, remember, are if you don't get your financing, if a bank will not lend to you, you get your deposit back. You don't lose, you're not putting your deposit at risk. Assuming that a buyer gets their financing contingency, that domino falls, and then the next one that falls is the board package that you are submitting to the co-op board. And a condo board has an equivalent. It's not as heavy. Condos boards issue what's called a waiver of right of first refusal. That's not the same. They cannot reject you like a co-op can. But that there's still a process, there's still paperwork. When the financing contingency domino falls and the board approves you or waives its right of first refusal in a condo, then you typically are ready. And the timing question you asked, Tina, I would think with financing, 60 to 90 days is typical in New York. If you are an all cash buyer deal, um, then it's more like 30 to 60. And townhouses and houses usually run on a similar timeline because it's really based on the financing. But in the house without a board or then buyers get their financing, they get their loan commitment, and then they're cleared to close. That takes a week or two, and then they're ready to close. So you think 60 to 90 with a lender involved.
And that I think is really important to plan 90 days out from that's from the time that you have signed the contract. That's not from when you put it on the market. So add another 30 days to prep a home for sale if you do have to do some work on the home to get it into sellable condition. If you do have to clear out your possessions. You do not need to clear out your possessions by law. You can sell something with the contents in place. It's just going to be looking for a different buyer. So those are things if you come to us and you say, I live in France and I have to sell this co-op on the Upper East Side. It is full to the brim with books and Amazon boxes, and I'm not going to be able to lift a finger, and I only have $10,000 reserved to get me between here and the sale. We're going to build a sale around that. So it's you're not going to get the maximum return on your investment. You won't get the most out of your sale. But if it's a question of I'm in a precarious position if I have to carry this mortgage any longer, or if I have to carry these co-op fees any longer, then let us build a sales scenario that's going to fit within your requirements. But be frank about them as you go through them. And so we've gone through this. You've decided that yes, it does make sense to sell at this point. So you do want to assemble your team. In New York City, you can sell without a real estate broker. I wouldn't recommend it in the case of an estate sale, but it is always possible. What you cannot sell without is a New York City real estate attorney. Michael, why is that?
Oh, it's too complicated. Lawyers have made it too complicated.
It's
It's
because it's
too
so great to have an
complicated. Yes.
attorney.
In other states, plenty of states have these risks to do real estate transactions like this without a lawyer. They've figured it out, but New York lawyers are too smart for that. We like make it impossible to navigate these contracts without other lawyers looking at them. So um, it's not advisable. It is a mandatory. You really have to have a lawyer.
To be fair, this is also one of the reasons why New York City was not hit as hard as certain other regions during the worldwide economic crisis in the 2008 to 2011. And
Mm.
one of the reasons New York recovered as quickly as it did is that some pretty intensive lawyering, particularly in the co-ops, has kept a lot of those transactions above board, even when the banks were eager to bypass some of those guidelines. So I'm very grateful every day that there are New York City real estate attorneys who are helping keep us all out of trouble.
And I think this consideration, like in the slide, Tina, about making sure that you have experts is a really good little bullet point. Your apartment, however you have it, if it's yours, if you've inherited it and you need to unload it, you need real expertise. Yes, you need a lawyer who does this all the time and who is well versed in what it's like to um, be a part of a real estate transaction. But you really do need an agent and a broker who really knows the neighborhood, knows the building, knows the game, has experience. I just have seen too many deals that wobble when even you're almost as like it's almost like you are as weak as your weakest link in a real estate transaction. You can have pros around you, but if you have a weakness in your team, it will be exposed I've seen that on the buy side. If you have a lender who just doesn't really know how to lend in New York, for example, that transaction, no matter that you have a lawyer or a broker who really know the game, the lender will wobble, and I think the transaction feels the weight of that. So just in every position that you as a buyer or a seller have, you need, real expertise.
That's really true. And I think you'll benefit from that expertise as well. This is not something we're saying to scare you. It is really it is just helpful. You have a job. You have responsibilities. These are people who can help you do this extra thing that you in all likelihood did not anticipate having to do this year and probably don't have a lot of time set aside to manage it. And having a good team of people who can take care of things for you on your behalf and to your advantage is really important.
Yep.
So documents needed. This I think is really crucial in every sale, but in an estate sale, the sooner we can get on this, the better, because chances are you do not know where all of these things are.
I was just
So
looking at this, Tina. I was
I
like
know
looking at
it's
this list
like,
and I'm like, what the hell do people do at an estate sale? What the panic, you
yeah,
know? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's true. But these are again the things that keep your property safe and keep you safe from scammers and deed theft and all of that. So if you have some of these things, it's going to be great. If you don't have them, let's talk about where to get them. So, Michael, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, I mean, look, for those of us who, if we don't have an estate situation, right? You're selling your place, you probably have access to all of this good stuff. And, you know, Tina, I want to have another session with you one day and just we talk about this slide for an hour. Don't deny me the pleasure of talking about documents needed for an hour with you. Nothing would make me happier, but
Oh, I think
but
the
like
people really want that. The people
let's just give the
demand.
people what they want, Tina, which is talking about the documents that we need to effectively and efficiently sell. Now, if you are in a state and a situation and you have inherited this property, finding this stuff will be challenging, but that's where you need Tina and her team to help you find this stuff. But let's just talk about what it is that you are looking for. And if you are not in an estate situation, and this is all critical for you to have in a beautiful Google Drive or a link that you can give to your lawyer and to your broker that has this. Okay, so the first is like, where is the original stock certificate, right? Is this a situation where there's a loan and the bank has your stock and lease in a co-op is your collateral for your loan, and the bank holds that. It's the physical paper is the ownership. It's kind of old school and fascinating. It's not like a deed that's recorded. You got to find that. Where is that? If there's a bank and we have to pay off that bank, we know where the stock and lease is. But sometimes, very often in these estate situations, there is no bank. The stock and lease is somewhere in that apartment, and that needs to be found. And if it's not found, there are consequences. Some co-ops take that very seriously. There are extra fees. There's documents that need to be signed. There's more intensive lien searches that are ordered. It can be a pain. So stock and lease is important. Your offering plan and amendments, all these wonderful bullets, copy of your maintenance statement, the last 2 years of financials. These are what buyers are going to ask. This is why you're looking at this stuff. It's not just to have. Buyers, when they do their due diligence on the apartment building, not the apartment itself, but the building, the co-op, the condo, they are going to research the financial health. And how do they research the financial health? They dig in. The lawyers of the buyers dig in. I do this all the time for my buyers. We read the last 2 years of the financials. We look at budgets. We look at memos from the board to the shareholders. We compare the maintenance statement invoice with the contract. We look at the offering plan. We look at the amendments to the offering plan. If you can get all this and present this to your buyer, I mean, you're so ahead of the game. I don't want to freak everybody out because if it's not there, there are ways to get it. You can buy it. Usually there's a managing agent who has almost all of this and you can purchase it. But this is what you need when you have that handshake with your buyer. You need to have this stuff ready to go. And I love that last bullet. Make a Google Drive, get out in front of this. That is the key.
It's true. And that is just for co-ops and condos. For a house, instead of a stock and lease, you're going to have a deed. That's a little bit easier, right, Michael?
Mhm. Yeah, it's recorded, so that's going to be online. You don't even need to necessarily find a deed in like a file cabinet. Nobody cares about your original deed in New York. That's recorded. But, if you can find a copy of the survey, you'd be a hero. If you can get a copy of the title policy, you'll be a hero. And then, Tina, why don't you talk about the PCD, the property condition disclosure statement? I feel like you brokers
That I
work
have
with
to
that a little
introduce
bit
this to
more.
people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
this is something you used to be able to pay your way out of. You could pay $500 and not have to do a property condition disclosure. The New York State has eliminated that option, and so now everybody within certain property types has to do a property condition disclosure statement or PCDS. So that is multiple pages where you have to say have you had leaks? What's the age of your roof? Have you had, and all these things. And one of the things that will happen as you fill that out is that one of the options is, I don't know. And so
Yeah,
if you don't know
yeah.
the answer to something, don't make up the answer to it. And particularly if this is something you've inherited, you probably
You don't
don't
know
know
anything. You
the
don't know
answer
anything.
to most of
Nope.
these questions.
Yep. Yep.
So it is something that you have to provide. It's not something that you have to do deep research on.
Mhm.
If you don't know, you don't know, and that is enough of an answer.
And if it's an estate situation, right, Tina, it's basically unknown for everything. It just
Yeah.
needs a buyer needs to have that document signed by the seller. But if you don't know, you don't know. That's
Right.
it. Yeah.
And then when we're looking also, we're going to do a deep search into your property to find out if there are any violations, any open permits, anything that's going to come back to slow your process. We really want to do that as early as we possibly can to get those violations cleared. Sometimes there's something from the 1960s that was before your family member even owned this property. Instead of fighting it, it's usually easier to just get out ahead of it and get those violations cleared. That takes time. I spent for a client of mine yesterday, I spent 2 hours at Euclid Avenue and at HPD to clear some violations yesterday, only to be told that the letter that I had in hand was a letter that they didn't know who had sent it, but a different letter had been sent to my clients. And the good news was I could just turn around and go home. There was no need for me to be there. But what's amazing about this process, I was like, okay, so that's good news. I don't mind wasting 2 hours if the end result is that the application has been filed and we'll be hearing from someone. So that is all things that we are willing to do. Again, in that case, it's a seller who's just recently had back surgery, and I don't want him sitting in a chair for 2 hours waiting
Mhm.
at Euclid
Yeah.
Avenue.
It's
So,
great. It's
but in an
wonderful.
estate sale, having somebody who's on the ground who can just do this, it feels like nonsense while it's happening, but once it's done, you'll be so relieved.
And check it out, right, Tina? Like you inherit a house that, like you don't necessarily know the history. You don't know if there's a sidewalk violation. You don't know if
Totally.
there's, right? What do
Yep.
you have no idea what you're dealing with. Is
Yep.
this a clean cell? Is there hair on it? All that stuff, and early on you talk to me, you talk to Tina, you get your team, we do the research together and we go, okay, this house is right now has these set of problems that have to be cleared. A buyer will not buy, a lender will not lend. Like
Right.
you have to clean this up, then we can sell. Or um let's show the house, but we have to take care of these problems in the
Right.
next month, right? I mean,
And
you gotta get ahead of it.
we got to get ahead of it and we have to be transparent with everybody on the other team. There's no hiding this information. It will
Yep.
come out. And so if you have something I am always showing homes with open violations. Like in New York City right
That's your
now, for
specialty,
whatever
Tina.
reason, I think maybe it's AI, something, but like they dug in, they found every violation and just served them all up and put them on they didn't necessarily let you know you had a violation, but they attached them all to your property's file so that if anybody's doing their due diligence. So you might find something where,
Hmm.
that again predates even your family's ownership of the home. Chances are you still have to clear it. It's not
Yep.
necessarily even that expensive to clear the violations. It just has to happen. So,
Yep.
as long as we're clear with people about it and we say, look, this will be done before closing, we just get it done. If it's something that cannot be handled, you may be searching for a cash buyer, an investor who's willing to take on some of the liabilities associated with your home. For us, that's a sort of worst case scenario just because you're going to get less money for your home if you're asking for a cash buyer to take on those liabilities. But um, but
Five
it's it is sometimes that has to happen, and then we just know who we're soliciting. So this piece is really important. Once we understand who you are, what the property is, what you need to get out of it, we're going to build a marketing plan around achieving your goals. If you're in that case, you have a house, it's full, again, full of Amazon boxes. And there's an open permit, and all we can do is find a cash buyer for it. There are cash buyers. They are specifically looking for that kind of property and we can find them. But ideally, what we do is we clean out the home. We maybe repaint, we clean it, we give it a deep cleaning. We kind of bring it back to life. Sometimes we'll stage it to make it look like somebody is living there now, and that is really persuasive to buyers. It makes a huge difference. We do not do virtual staging. We don't want to sell a myth to someone. We only want to sell people reality. We want to sell them the best version of reality, but we want to sell them reality. And I'm going to lose Michael in a minute, so I'm going to scroll pretty quickly through these next bets. Um, because we've got your property on the market. We are soliciting buyers. We've done a really good job. And so we have multiple offers. And we've gone through and taken into consideration not just the offer price, but also is the buyer somebody who we think is going to be able to pass the board in a co-op situation? Are they going to be able to get financing? Are they trouble? So is it somebody who we know is just going to hassle us every step of the way? Sometimes it's worth it for the hassle because they have so much more money, but in a lot of cases, those people are just going to waste your time and then disappear.
Yep.
And then figuring out when it's worth it to allow for a financing contingency. Again, if we've cleared all your violations and we're priced well and you have a very qualified buyer, a financing contingency should not be a hurdle that you're really worried about.
Yep.
So getting into contract, buyer's due diligence. So all of that paperwork that we've assembled into this beautifully organized Google Drive is there waiting for our buyers. We've selected the best possible option out of all of the offers that you've received because we got so many offers. And now we have the perilous moment between an accepted offer and a signed contract. So I feel like there are two really stressful weeks in the sale of a home. One is that week between accepted offer and signed contract, and the other is the week before your closing. So here we're going to get into contract. I have put together a deal sheet with all of the deal terms. I have sent it to Michael Moshan, your attorney, and I've sent it to the buyer's attorney along with all of the due diligence documents in that Google Drive. And now it's over to you, Michael.
So, right, I mean, at that point, the buyer is going to do an inspection typically of your co-op or condo or house. In a house situation, it's it's an intense process. An engineer goes through the house and will, with a fine-tooth comb for co-ops and condos, they'll go through the apartment with a fine-tooth comb. And while that happens, the contract is prepared by the seller's lawyer, and that is negotiated. The key points of a contract these days really are the closing timing, the making clear what the costs are, who bears the costs, and then how to handle these contingencies, the financing contingencies, the board process, what your responsibilities are as a seller, what your responsibilities as a buyer. It's not made up every time. Real estate lawyers mostly use boilerplates that guide us. Everyone has their particular rider, but It's a stressful time because you have the contract going on one track, and then you have the due diligence going on the other track, and then you have the inspection. So you have these three tracks going. Sometimes they're colliding with each other. We might be done with the contract, but everybody's waiting on the buyer's lawyer to finish their due diligence. That gets everybody crazy. You might be finished with the um, due diligence, but there are some contractual sticking points. That gets everybody crazy. You might have the due diligence done and the contract done, but now the buyer wants to do an inspection. That gets everybody crazy. So, there's lots of ways for this to end in stress. But good lawyers, good brokers keep everybody cool and collected and get you, to the finish line, which is a signed contract, which I agree, Tina. Everyone really does breathe a sigh of relief because in New York, you are vulnerable until you have a fully executed contract. A buyer can walk, a seller can walk for no reason. They're not bound. They have to give their 10% deposit. That deposit needs to be received by the seller's lawyer, and the seller and the buyer both sign the contract, and the contract is distributed to the parties. Up until that point, anybody can walk. And so the stress level is right up here because you do not know that you have anything that is real that you can depend on until you do.
Agreed. And for us as brokers during that period of time, we are also often continuing to show for backup. If you have backup offers, we are checking in with your backup offers and trying to keep them on the hook in case we lose that first person. So it's a delicate period of time, and it really requires patience, and our job is to be as responsive as possible because the thing that kills deals is time, and we don't want to be the reason. We don't want anybody to be waiting for us.
Yep.
So we can be patient while we're waiting for the management company to get back to somebody, but we don't want to be the reason why people are feeling frustrated.
Yep. So
So,
this is an interesting point for me to like step off, right, Tina? Because like I've gotten the deal to contract, I take the
yep.
credit. I like feel like I've been a hero. We're in contract. I
You're
feel
in
like
contract.
it was a
Yes.
rigorous contract negotiation, but I like held the parties together. We are in contract, and now can I step away and
You
give the
sure
rest to
can. It
you?
comes right back to me at this point.
Well, I know that there's a closing that I will miss, so I'm not happy about missing the closing, which I feel like is my
Oh, I think
favorite
I can
part.
talk through your
Can you
closing.
talk? Okay, good,
Yes.
good. Tina, it has been an absolute pleasure to spend a little time talking real estate with you. Let's do it again soon.
Let's do it again soon. Thanks, Michael.
Bye.
Bye. All right. So Michael has gotten us into contract, and it is a time when we breathe a sigh of relief. But unfortunately, we have to kind of get back up the next day and start working again. So if you do have a mortgage outstanding on the property, we have to arrange the payoff of that loan. That's something that we will do in association with your attorney. Clearing title is something that will be done by the buyer's attorney. And then we have to settle all of the outstanding fees, the debts with the co-op and condo. So make sure that you're absolutely up to date on everything. As Michael mentioned, sometimes going another couple of days just can mean thousands of dollars in additional costs. So we don't want anything to slow us down at this point. When we are within a couple weeks of closing, so the buyer has had their mortgage approved or at least has their funds ready to do the purchase. Um, we're getting ready to schedule the closing itself. That involves a lot of different people. That will be handled by the attorneys, will spearhead that scheduling, but it involves title closers, bank closers. It involves the attorneys, the brokers. Lots of people are involved in scheduling that closing. If you are not able to attend the closing, that's perfectly fine. You can have a power of attorney for someone else or your attorney to sign those closing documents for you at the table. So that's something you just want to make sure you do in advance. We do it all the time with people who are out of town, out of the country, but sometimes it involves actually, FedExing documents that have to be hand signed and then mailed back. So we don't want to wait to the last minute to do a power of attorney. The power of attorney is just for this one transaction. It's not giving somebody control over your life. Then vacating the premises. So if we've staged the home, it's just a matter of my company coming back in, getting our furniture out, leaving the place vacant and broom clean. If there are some of your family's possessions, then you may want to come through with other family members and decide who's going to get what. We can put post-it notes on things and distribute those to the different family members. Sometimes people can just walk away with things. If you are in a co-op or condo, we do want to make sure that everybody knows that you'll be using the elevator on that day. We need to make sure that everything is in working order. So sometimes we missed something at an inspection, or sometimes something just breaks in the time between the inspection and the closing, and there's a dishwasher that's mysteriously not working. We either need to fix that dishwasher or provide a credit at closing to the buyer so that they can fix the dishwasher themselves. We have really great handymen who can like get in there and fix a dishwasher on a moment's notice if need be, but we don't want to wait till the last minute to find out that there's something that needs to be repaired. All right, so we're paying off our mortgage. If there's a HELOC, if there are any other subsidiary loans, we want to make sure that those have been addressed. Sometimes other loans will show up during the due diligence process, and that we have to make sure that there is, if there's a second mortgage that's been paid off, that there is a record of that that has been shared with all of the parties. And then you will get a closing statement from the attorney showing you what all of those additional fees will be. So, as we mentioned, I mean, these can run to 10% of your sale price if depending on what your situation is. So we want to make sure that there's enough money left over after you've paid all of these fees for you to hopefully benefit from the sale of this home. And then we would adjust with your buyer. So sometimes if there is let's say you have an oil tank and it's half full, your buyer will pay for that oil tank. We do want to adjust all of your utilities. We do not want to turn off your utilities in these buildings. You may say there's nobody living here. Why would I be paying for the electric? Because we need everything to be working when we do the final walkthrough. So in 48 hours to 24 hours before the closing, we will do a final walkthrough. We, your broker, will do a final walkthrough with the buyer to make sure that everything is as the contract says it will be. So if there was some electrical repair that needed to be done because there were some outlets that weren't working, we need to make sure that that has been addressed and that those outlets are now working. It's usually pretty easy to do it, but sometimes something comes up. Again, if all of a sudden in that last final walkthrough, there's something that's not working, sometimes it's easier to just offer a few $100s to the buyer as a credit just to be done with it. All right, so thank you so much for sticking around and doing this Selling in Brooklyn process with us. Hope that this has been helpful. I know it's a lot of information to take on board, but there's many, many, many more conversations to be had around issues like this. So there's my information and Michael's information. We'll also be emailing you the contact information after this session. So for Michael, Moshan, and myself, we really welcome your questions and look forward to hearing from you soon. Thanks.